Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to the 6th Indegene Digital Summit. I hope you've been enjoying the session so far. And we've got another very exciting session lined up for you now. So I'm Govind Chandra. I'm a Vice President at Indegene. I'm based out of London. And it's my honor to host this very, very exciting discussion on global capability centers, or GCCs as they call it. Our discussion today will focus on what it takes for life sciences companies, particularly pharma companies, to scale what we call domain-heavy services. By that I mean commercial, medical, or scientific services through the GCC model and at scale. So we all know that for the last 10 or 15 years, pharma companies have done really well at scaling non-domain heavy services such as IT or digital or finance, HR, and so on. However, we notice when it comes to medical or commercial services, there have been different challenges in delivering through the model at scale. So today we'll go deeper into this topic. We'll talk through case studies, we'll talk through challenges, opportunities, and explore this further. And we'll also talk specifically on technology in today's environment and what how that is impacting this delivery of such services through this model, and those that adopt technology and how they're able to leapfrog others in this space. For those that are tuning in, thank you very much. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please do share them in the chat, feedback, questions you may have. We'll try and cover them as we go along. And now to go deeper into the discussion, I'll invite the panel to join in. Again, very distinguished panel that has firsthand experience leading GCCs or global hubs in the space. And with us, we have today Naveen Gulapalli from Novartis. We have Uday Bose from Boehringer Ingelheim, Pedro Lopez from Sandoz, and Andrew Faulkner from Eli Lilly. Thank you, panel. Wonderful to have you on. So before we dive in, would love to do a round of introductions for the audience and those that may not know you. Let me just orchestrate this. So Pedro, if you don't mind going first, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Govind, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here with all of you today. My name is Pedro Lopez, and I'm leading the Sandoz GCC. It's a new organization, as you know, Sandoz. So we are very brand new in doing this type of activity, but we have been doing that for so many years as part of a mother company before. So I have plenty of experience that I'm willing to share and discuss with my fellow panel members today here.
There you go. Uday, do you want to go next, please?
Sure, thanks, Govind. So Uday Bose from Boehringer Ingelheim, and I am the head of Global Customer Experience Excellence and Business Steering, within which we have our global service organization. So yeah, very happy to be here. Thank you.
Andy, do you want to go next?
Yes, hello everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to be here today. Andy Faulkner, I am the Vice President of Marketing Services at Lilly, and I have quite a bit of experience helping to set up the commercial function at our GCC, and specifically today lead a team called Lilly Marketing Studios, who are responsible for in-house advertising at Lilly, who produce most of the marketing materials for the company. So very excited to be with you to share information on this important topic.
Lastly, Naveen.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. This is Naveen Gulapalli. I am the head of Novartis Global Business Solutions, which is mainly into commercial and marketing operations for our enterprise, operating out of GCCs all around the world. And I also manage Novartis Corporate Centers, which is our internal terminology for GCCs. We've been doing it for over 10 years. Some of the colleagues here, like Pedro, have been part of it. So really happy to share our progress and journey and challenges with this group. Thank you. Back to you, Govind.
Thank you. Okay, wonderful. Let's get started. So just to tee off, Naveen, maybe starting with yourself, and you know, the Novartis obviously has one of the most mature scale, longest running service centers in this space. So fundamentally, if you think about, you know, the business case or the value that can be delivered by consolidating commercial medical services in a GCC model, and sort of challenges that one may face, what would be your thoughts?
Yeah, so thanks. So I think, of course, as you mentioned, the keyword consolidating, right? So for a large company like ours that has operations in many countries, bringing work into the global capability centers allows us the opportunity to understand the work, to streamline it, standardize, optimize, and then eventually digitally enable this kind of work into the enterprise. So I would say centralization, standardization, optimization, which is including digitization, is really the advantage of doing this work at the GCCs. And of course, the challenges is that it is we are an organization that was heavily decentralized. So we deal with quite a bit of variations. And then, of course, building a new part of the organization takes time to build capabilities. So, but yeah, I mean, these challenges are a part of the game. They're not insurmountable. So overall, I think this is an incredible opportunity for enterprises to leverage the talent ecosystem in the capability centers.
Wonderful. Thank you, Naveen. Any other panel member wants to jump in with basically value that they've seen delivered or have sort of led for their enterprise in such a model?
I would just add that in our experience, the talent that's available within the GCC marketplace is often just amazing, both in terms of depth and breadth. And some of our best ideas now and innovation actually come from our GCC. That takes some time as your GCC matures. But to me, the most exciting element of starting a GCC is access to talent and the new ideas and innovation that can come from that.
Thank you. So just moving on, I think so once the value and the business case established, I think choosing a location in all the global options that are available is obviously a key decision. Pedro, I know you just went through the journey recently. So any thoughts on what are the considerations? How do you think about where do you want to set up or get a GCC footprint going?
Yes, we went recently through that decision-making process. And actually, it's one of my favorite topics. No, I mean, I think many of us would say that on our private life, we like to travel and see the world. No, so when you think about the world from a business perspective, actually, it's something similar. That you have plenty of locations where you can go, and there are different benefits associated to those. No, so the first consideration is that why would you go to a certain location? What are you looking for? What is exactly what the company needs in the moment where you are? No, that's an important consideration when doing that. No. I like to say always, imagine that you are in a fantastic beach with palm trees. It's a genuinely great location to be. But if you are into ski, you want to be a winter sport medalist, maybe you're not in the right place. So that's a very trivial thought, but actually that's how you need to think about it. What are you trying to get from the locations where you will operate? No? At the early stages of GBS, normally, I mean, we were all in those years where it was labor arbitrage. You are trying to find locations where you can be very cost efficient and you can deliver similar activities, but lower cost. But that's gone already. That was many years ago. Now there are many other aspects, and certainly people skills, digital skills are playing a major role in all this decision-making process. Also, I would say that at the same time, we're looking into a world which is changing, no? At the macroeconomic level, how things are evolving, fast-paced, in certain directions that are not so nice, actually. That has an impact also on how you can do business. So all of that comes into the equation. But certainly, just to leave that topic with a very good note, today in making those decisions, you're looking for big talent pools, which is what Andy was saying before. No? At the end, you see a lot of fantastic talent coming through the hub locations. And that's a major element also in making your decisions. Now, what is the magic wand? There is not such a magic wand. Every company has to go through the exercise. But putting all these discussions into the equation, you find your footprint and you start evolving. And then you adapt because it's not a fixed decision.
I think if I can add, one of the factors for us was a really long-term thinking here. All right. So for an organization that has had a profound impact on life and will do for many, many decades to come, we looked at setting up a GCC as a step to secure talent for the next few decades, right? So it's just not about the short-term goals and arbitrage and those things. The real story here is the demographic dividend of operating in a GCC, right?
It makes sense. I think we'll touch base, go deeper on the talent question. I mean, that's obviously a key one. But if we're going there, I think one of the again, if I just chronologically go through, the phases of doing that, you've got the value proposition, you've got the location. I think the other big question that we hear and the key success factor we hear is about the operating model, right? How does the GCC interact with the internal stakeholders, the internal business teams? and the local ecosystem and the broader ecosystem. So the operating model question is key, right? And how do you, what are the success factors? What are the best practices? So Uday, I know you've got a very scale operation in that sense, and you've been through many aspects of the operating model iteration. So any thoughts on what are best practices and how should one think about the operating model?
I mean, as much as we can integrate, it has to be fully integrated into the reality of the business, right? So I think that's the difference from a traditional offshore service organization, which is process orientated, almost a faceless organization. I think success here is where the understanding of the reality of today's business, but also the pipeline, the future, the areas we're going into, that is key. And to the points that have been made earlier, it's critical that the talents in the GCCs are fully connected to what's happening in the company. They know the pulse of the organization. Because that is often one of the pain points and I've been as a brand manager, feeling that I have to constantly be briefing new people about my reality. We just don't have time to do that. So that kind of seamless understanding in the GCC of what the business is facing. Sometimes to Andy's point, actually, maybe going even above, maybe the GCC knows even more than the person who's got a brand focus because they're looking at it from a broader ecosystem. I think that's key part from an organizational perspective, that it's very fully integrated and not seen as a separate organization or an offshore piece. In our model, we've made sure that we have at the coalface on the front line, we have the delivery team, the account management team right there, hand in hand with the brand teams, with the asset teams, because coming in too late, again, doesn't work. So we're there at the co-creation phase, we're there throughout the entire life cycle. And that's how we're able to partner most effectively.
That makes a lot of sense. And linked to that, and you talked about the experience, right? Another key aspect of success is the change management, right? The how do you deliver that seamless experience? And also very loose, very broad term change management, but how do you change and the requirements change as you scale up? So Annie, I know this is a topic very close to your heart, something that you spend a lot of time thinking about. So again, what are some of the considerations? What are some of the best practices that you've deployed to get this GCC model to success?
Thanks, Gobind. Yes, we've definitely been through lots of different experiences with regard to this. Some functional areas more quickly adopted and successful, and others more challenging. I would say overall, commercial and medical services can be a particular challenge just because oftentimes the stakeholders are so used to that personal touch. They're used to people within their own HQ who they can rely on every day. So making that shift to a GCC can sometimes be a big mental shift for folks, not to mention some of the just physical challenges like lack of geographic proximity, lack of ability to have the same time zone and conversations in that same time zone. So one of the key considerations, and this is something that I personally have had success with, is to think about what's the phasing of the reporting relationships between your new functional area and the GCC. So for example, we might have a solid line to a functional leader at the HQ as we're transferring our capabilities and really getting those up and running and making sure that the people at the GCC stay connected to the people in the business, the stakeholders every day. We might have a dotted line to the center, more from a cultural consistency and day-to-day policy perspective. And then you can think about shifting those lines of reporting over time. It's also very, very important, in my experience, to manage the pace of change for your stakeholders. If you try to go all in with everything overnight, you may have trouble with credibility, with quality of work in the beginning. So really mapping out your roadmap, thinking about the pace of change, the pace of the deliverables, maybe thinking about some very deliberate quick wins or low-hanging fruit, maybe with more transactional deliverables that you can focus on in the beginning. As the team builds their credibility, as they build their confidence, and as the people at the headquarters say, wow, this team actually really is good, I would like to use them more, it makes a lot of sense, this is a good decision. So thinking about how you ease your way in, I think is a really critical component. Honestly, as these teams mature, I've seen a lot of pull. And at the point we are today, and I thank people like Naveen who gave us a lot of good advice in the beginning, but now we're getting to a level of maturity where we're seeing the GCC team get tagged with ownership of some of our most important either compliance or operational policies. The innovation seems to flow very, very freely from that team. We've seen people who started off at a base level now move into supervisory positions where they're sitting on advisory boards in HQ. So it's great to see the progress, but I would say just taking an incremental approach as much as possible will serve you well in the long run. Investing the time to allow the team to grow, to allow the team to develop that expertise is very important.
Absolutely.
I think it's lovely, actually, the word that you are saying at the end, Andy. I love that, investing the time, because these are things that are not happening over time, no, overnight. Sorry, this is requiring actually a lot of effort, no. And in my view, that time is worth investing, but it's also worth making some decisions very early on to set the ground for what you want to build in the future, no. So having that vision or where you want to land will be very important, but allowing the time to happen is also super important.
It makes a lot of sense. And I think, and you talked about innovation. I think, Naveen, you talked about digitalization and technology. I think that brings obviously to a very fundamental question also that today is more relevant than ever, is innovation, right? How do you think about innovation? And so in your experience, you've seen the full journey many years now. What has been your thoughts on innovation? How much do you invest? How do you prioritize where to invest? Would love to get your thoughts.
Yes, and as Andy was saying, I think you have to pace the expectations on innovation sequentially, right? First, we'll need to build the credibility, internal knowledge of the organization, and develop the trust in terms of leading edge deliverables from these teams, right? And again, they have to be integrated teams as well. So then I think innovation is going to happen a lot, because the ecosystem that we're operating is generally very, very pro change, tech advanced, and most GCCs locations actually, we have talent from different industries as well, not just the healthcare industry, right? So we learn from retail, we learn from banking, we learn from across different industries in terms of best marketing practices, digital practices, operations, etc. So I think the talent pool has this ability and knowledge. But what we need to allow this innovation to happen is, progress to a great degree of trust and confidence, as I said, and through functional excellence, and then be empowered to innovate, right? Quite often, the decision makers, process owners, or heads of those functions are not necessarily in GCCs, right? So therefore, GCCs are limited to incremental task-based innovation. But if we want a true transformation and innovation, which is one of the aspirations for Novartis, is to be a transformation center for the enterprise. So part of that, heavy part of that, is innovation. So we take the ownership, we are empowered to reimagine functions or processes as part of integrated teams. So it's very much on cards. We also have the advantage, apart from the skills and the culture, also the cost of innovation is going to be pretty optimal at a GCC. And then there is the whole innovation ecosystem, particularly in India, which has startups and incubators, accelerators. It's the third largest in the world. Of course, being global teams, we work with innovators anywhere in the world, actually. So I think all of these, if we are able to access, we should be able to deliver change and innovation pretty excitingly for the organization.
That makes sense. Thank you for that. And so they're coming to you now. We talked about talent, right? As the fundamental, even the business case, right? Why you go down this journey, why you think about that. So in your experience, if that is one of the core reasons, how do you think about attracting talent, training talent, developing it, and then retaining it in a very competitive model? Obviously, we see so much action in this space in our industry in the last couple of years. So what are some of the best practical thoughts that you've seen?
Sorry, is that to me?
No, Uday, can you hear me?
Sorry,
Yes.
I thought you said to Naveen. Sorry.
No worries.
There's only four of us, so
No.
best practices in the area of talent.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
What I've seen that's working really well, and I think it was touched on earlier, was again this interaction and this exchange of talents between the corporate center, the service center, core business as well. And as I said, when the center becomes part of the core business, both in terms of what it understands and how it works, but also its people, I think that becomes that's where the magic happens, right? So it's interesting whether companies, that's something that we're looking at, is whether we actually have it as a metric, has it as a target in terms of how frequently we have talents moving between the service organization and the core kind of the functional asset teams, for example. And I can't underestimate, you can't underestimate, that's quite a big step. That's not a conventional approach, because the recruitment approach that we're taking often is different. The hubs are located where they're located. So as I say, the risk of it becoming a faceless organization and just a service center is very, very high. And you have to actually pull and make sure your talents are visible, ask them to bring their deliverables to the organization to present their work. I know we're all under strain in terms of cost and travel, but the interactions, the physical interactions between the teams is incredibly important. And the other thing I think, and Andrew mentioned it, there are some incredible talents who are just ahead of the game in terms of innovation technology, just because of the hubs and where they're working and the interactions and the networks that they have, which when they come into a kind of headquarters environment, just is very, very refreshing. But it is a flag, and I think it would be remiss of us to sit here and not acknowledge that there is a risk, right? That it becomes like a ceiling. Where do these talents go beyond within a service organization? So it requires us to be brave. It's around diversity, equity, inclusion as well. It's giving people a stretch, seeing a core set of skills, and giving them an opportunity. But I honestly think in the world we're living in now, with so many different channels at play, so many different approaches, taking a different look at our talent mix in headquarters is also a good opportunity. And these are our people. That's the other key thing, that the people in the service centers need to feel they're part of the core organization, as opposed to something that's kind of out of the way.
Any other thoughts? Because we talk about in very high attrition, increasing attrition levels in today's very competitive market, particularly in certain high focused geographies, and we talk about how giving what Uday's mentioning, that experience, that career progression, maybe even rotating talent between different service groups or capabilities could encourage talent to sort of stay and continue with a company. So any other thoughts on maybe ideas, best practices on what you've seen work very well, particularly in retaining talent and high quality talent?
I have one quick thought, which is that often our centers are composed of people who have come from dozens of different companies. And so those companies all have different cultures. Oftentimes when they get to your GCC, they're not really sure what the culture is. And so it may seem like an overinvestment of time to people who sit at headquarters. But what we've learned is that in reality, you can't overinvest the time and effort to build the culture, to reinforce the culture, to make sure that people understand that they can speak up, they can come with their innovative ideas. They're not going to get in trouble for saying, hey, maybe there's a better way to do this. So encouraging that kind of behavior, and then connecting the people who do speak up and the people who do have ideas with some of the thought leaders at the HQ to begin to develop those natural relationships. I think that's a very important part of talent development. It gives people the confidence to expand, to grow their networks, and then things begin to take natural roots from there and grow. And we've seen many people move into other functions and take on leadership roles that we couldn't have even imagined at the beginning.
One of the
Absolutely.
things we put a lot of effort in is we work in life sciences, and I never tire of talking about what we actually do. And when we talk about it, when we take a moment to pause and think about the consequence of the communication, the messages, the content, all of the different things that we're doing beyond the actual molecule, it's a very humbling sector to be working in. And you find people who work in life sciences, it's not often that they leave the sector. They may move to different companies, but there's a magnetism about working in healthcare, which I think it's tragic if people in our corporate centers, in our service centers, aren't connected to that. And I've seen people who are in the service centers who don't always appreciate what that content, what that piece of material has in terms of its impact. And when you connect that, I think that is incredibly powerful. And we never tire of thanking and expressing our gratitude to the people who are working behind the scenes often, because without that support, we couldn't reach our physicians, we couldn't be able to deliver for patients. So as part of a retention strategy, I don't think you have to look that far. You just have to look at, what we do for patients, what we do for society. And I think that's something that we can all be proud of. So that's another area of best practice that I've seen and that we certainly pursue.
Absolutely.
I like always to say, actually, sorry, Naveen, I like to say always that when you're in a hub, when you're in a GCC, actually, there is a super strong connection to the purpose, which is what you are alluding today there. And there is a strong connection to the location where you are. You might be a professional in reporting and accounting, or you may be in commercial services, but they are both professionals sitting in a certain location. So those two dimensions for me are the critical dimensions to work with and to do stuff, no? And starting from something super basic, no? When you attract people, you were saying before, actually, Andy, no? There are people coming from so many industries, different level of experience, different backgrounds, university studies. So there is a tremendous difference there, diversity there, which is super rich. As they come in, you put them through proper onboarding processes, and that is the first moment where you connect with the person to that purpose and to that location. You start talking about the benefits of being in certain place. How do you deliver value for the company? And those, say 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever your onboarding process is, those are magical for the future of that associate, because in that moment, you are really cementing how they will think about the company and how they will be proud about how they are contributing. And then pushing that forward a little bit more, there is a tool that I know Naveen in our common past we use a lot, actually. We used to call them the employee resource groups, no? So you have people coming from the location, bringing their thoughts together, creating a group to deliver a certain activity, being the green group trying to reduce plastic consumption in the site, being the diversity group trying to deliver diversity through your location. There are plenty of topics. Now, if you use those groups and you connect them properly with the bigger picture of the company, with the strategic initiatives, and they feel the power of what they're doing locally in the full context globally, that's a tremendous connection also that you can carry forever. So those are specific interventions that you can do, and they will drive the right culture, and they will connect the talent to stay longer and to deliver with happiness at the end, actually, on what they're doing. Sorry, Naveen, I interrupted you before also.
No worries, Pedro. Just to add, so I think the GCCs, in fact, for sure, the GCCs have a much higher retention rate than other companies in these markets when you look at a certain skill set, right? So if it is service providers or consulting firms, etc. And that's because they have a strong sense of belonging to a company, right? So think about all our companies, they're operating in these locations for the first time ever, right? So now colleagues, associates in these locations have the opportunity to be equal part of these phenomenal companies, and that's a valued opportunity for associates, right? And then I've seen over many years that the best way to retain is through quality of work and the nature of work people do.
Mm-hmm.
So all of us compete for talent. All of us, it's a different competition out here at the GCCs. This is a battle for talent, and the way to win it is to actually grow the GCCs, keep increasing their scope, depth, empowerment, and leadership, and provide that career path and opportunities for associates. This will obviously drive better impact for the organization in any case, right? So that's real key, right? So it's not really financial, it's really the sense of being an equal part of a wonderful culture and company. And the second is the kind of work that they do is always additive, right? So they keep doing new things, different things. For me, that's the best way. Our attrition is not really a problem, and it's not the highest in our GCC centers in the company. We have attrition in some of our major markets that's even higher than GCCs. So it's just I think it's over-indexed. In my opinion, it's another operating factor, but it's not super deliberating, I think, right? So that's the right word. So it doesn't get in the way. I mean, we've been managing attrition for more than 15-20 years now, and we also should accept that a certain amount of attrition is good attrition, right? So yep. we need to rotate people as well.
Absolutely.
I think what you all mentioned, like connecting the work that has been doing, because sometimes it can feel very operational, very far away from the market and the patients and the people that you're working with. But connecting that and creating that real, and I've seen you all do this for your teams also in some level. I think that really adds that level of purpose, and that obviously that really creates that level of connect with the broader organization. Absolutely agree. So coming back to technology, I know this is a topic that a lot of you want to hear back. So given what we've heard, Andy, if you think about technology and some specific examples of how to deploy technology. I know we talked about innovation being a priority. How do you need to invest in that? But if you look at specific examples, maybe that you've deployed, or where do you see technology disrupting and giving the opportunity to leapfrog in GCCs today in these services?
Sure, absolutely. Knowing that we have people participating today who may be considering a GCC and just getting started with the thought process, I thought I would start with maybe just some basic considerations. And this goes back to site selection as well. Obviously, you should be thinking about some of these things as you consider sites. But what are the minimum set of platforms that your team must have access to in order to deliver your services? Early questions could include, do you have a license agreement that permits you to use those tools within the target geography? Will you have adequate bandwidth at the site? Is that provided within the local infrastructure to be able to provide your services? I remember in some of our early days, we would get phone calls saying that our associates were waiting an hour or 2 hours to download video and image files. So even something as basic as bandwidth is very, very important to consider during site selection. Also, are there any country-specific concerns with network security, employee access to certain types of sensitive data? Are there any country-specific rules with regard to intellectual property? So all of these things need to be considered. And I would just really encourage anybody thinking about selecting a site or starting a new GCC to work closely with your IT infrastructure team within your company or others to make sure that all those boxes are ticked. Another key consideration from a technology perspective is workflow and configuration. So for example, we use within my team a tool that I'm sure many in pharma do, which is Viva Vault PromoMats for the approval and the production and movement of tactics and content. So as you think about what roles sit in headquarters, what roles sit at the GCC, maybe you have roles at your advertising agency, how do you keep the content, how do you keep work moving 24/7? And how do you configure the tool so that you're prepared for various contingencies? So for example, in our case, we've had products approved on the same day as an Indian holiday when everyone's out of the office for 2 or 3 days. So do you have redundancy at the headquarters where maybe somebody at the headquarters can perform that role on that given day? Or vice versa. We've also had work pop up that's critical work during the Christmas holiday for us in Indianapolis. So are there people at the center in India who can manage that work in the absence of people at the home office who can move it along? So just some very basic things to think about with regard to technology. I would say, finally, these days, we're all hearing about the emergence and the explosion of AI capabilities every day. And that's probably the thing that's on my mind the most. You know, as a new thing comes along, you have to ask yourself, is this something that I want to build myself? If so, what kind of headcount or footprint will be required to build that? Or maybe does a supplier partner offer that capability? Should I think about outsourcing this even rather than bringing it into my GCC? Is it something that I should think about a build, operate, transfer model so that perhaps that supplier who's got a leg up can help to prime the pump, but then eventually I own that capability? Or even thinking about how does AI potentially impact my expansion plans for headcount as some of these new capabilities come online? So those are just a few thoughts, but clearly technology is a big part of the equation, both for starting a new GCC as well as for managing it and thinking about headcount and footprint over time.
I think I would like to comment also something, because you alluded to that, Andy, before. When you're talking about technology and now in the context of GCCs and in the context of commercial services or scientific services, those are services that you typically deliver as some sort of local flavor to them, because at the end you are touching local populations, local hospitals, local healthcare professionals. So you need to have a level of flexibility in the way you think about it. I have the extreme case, if you like, that when we were trying to go in China, with the tools that we were using in the rest of the world, we were really hitting the walls, okay? Because at the end, they use a different set of tools. In some cases, actually a lot better tools, in some cases not. But the point is not about if they're better or worse. The point is those are the tools that the population that you are trying to target are used to manage. So you need to have that open mind to really think carefully what are you introducing and why. No? And then from a point of view of the GCCs also, no, how you manage those tools. What is going to be the knowledge about that particular set of tools? Probably in the local market, okay? Now we come with the mindset and the right mindset in general that out of a hub, you can do many things globally. But wait a moment. When you're talking about the commercial engagement model for a particular country in which the technology is very specific, maybe you need to think differently about that. And there are certain capabilities that you need to take to a different location, create a new hub for that specific capability, or think differently about that. No, so that would be my word of caution about applying our global mind in the GCCs to everything in the same way, because there are nuances that are important to handle, in particular when you're talking about technology.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
If I can add, Govind, I think tech is a huge enabler for transformation, right? And if our ambition is to have our GCCs be the transformation driver or engine for the enterprise, there is an opportunity also for companies to think about doing it a little bit more boldly, you know. So let's take maybe an example of China and the ecosystem. Many decades back, maybe companies have realized the ecosystem is very favorable in China. Not only cost is better for manufacturing, but you would get higher quality products, more standard, etc. Right? And so factories were relocated, but did we relocate the exact machinery? We didn't, right? So companies have, you know, modernized at that time and really built state of the art. So the kind of shift that is happening to GCCs is also tectonic. It's about work now moving to where the talent is, in a great environment with a lot of advantages. So do we have the opportunity to rebuild it in a new way? Absolutely. I think quite often the initial business cases, because they're focused on cost, don't really take that opportunity. But if there's a leading company out there that really wants to think about, you know, setting up their function in a different way, a digital IT, a more agile organization. There are a few examples of other companies, banks who've done it and said, my new organization is going to be an entirely digital organization. I'm not going to have a single piece of paper or a single physical, you know, a process that needs a physical activity, right? So there are ways to actually be quite bold about the digital ambition, and look at the whole ecosystem, not just the GCC, but partners in the ecosystem to actually build something in a far more transformative way, I think.
Makes sense. Right, and you touched upon that, obviously technology to accelerate, but also partnership, right? So Uday, if you think about using partners to accelerate your journey or add capabilities or add other, you know, things that can help the GCC really transform. Any thoughts on, you know, when is the right time to consider a partner, and what are considerations and what are best practices going down, even partnering in the local ecosystem like Naveen was talking about?
Yeah, I mean, just to comment on the last conversation, I think we are all enamored by technology and the pace of innovation, but what I find on a daily basis is the basic things are often amiss, right? And technology leverages on a good foundation, off a good foundation. GCSEs, going back to the best practice, when you're really analyzing data, analyzing impact, quality of your data is good. Bringing insights to the organization in terms of, this is how content, for example, is performing, if we just take that as an example. How our customers are reacting, how quickly we can respond, how quickly we can preempt. A lot of this is actually base information that we hold within our organizations. Customers are telling us this, but we're not always on top of that information. So I think but just on the technology topic, let's not be cautious. We have to embrace it, but we have to also remember the basics. And for me, that's where partnering, again, to your question, comes in really, really well, because I don't think we have to invent everything ourselves. This everything created here mentality is not what our patients need, right? Our patients need us to all collaborate. And it was great. A couple of years ago, I met with Naveen. Very openly, we talked in terms of Novartis and Boehringer Ingelheim. There's a lot more collaboration, I think, in our sector than people think, between companies, between partners. And actually finding an opportunity to partner with a company that can potentially take on something that you would normally build yourself is an incredible way forward. I think it relies, as with all relationships, right, on trust, on a common objective, a common purpose, and mutual benefit. But I find, again, early partnering and being open to partnering across your value chain is important to get you to the ultimate objective, innovation.
I think we have many times actually taken those decisions of partnership based on resources. No, do I have the resources? Don't I have the resources? And there is no one company with unlimited resources. I think those decisions, they should come from the point of view of the creativity. Do we have limited creativity or unlimited creativity? And the answer is limited. Okay, you have the set of people that you have, and or even if there are Nobel Prizes, they see what they see. They don't see the full industry. They don't see all the sector. Okay, so that's where partnership, in my opinion, they bring a tremendous value. You expand your creativity capabilities, okay, because there are more people thinking about how to solve problems. Then the resources come in play, okay? You leverage resources that others may be putting in place to solve problems, and therefore you are tackling problems with a lot more strength than if you do it alone, okay? And then there is the element of timing, no? I mean, sometimes you don't have the time for that. You need to really go very fast. That's the case of Sandoz, for example. We had to really go through a spin-off process, and that meant there is a certain date in which you need to be ready. So certainly timing plays a role here, no? But even if in the time constraint, if you think from the creativity point of view, there is a transformational element in that situation that with partnerships you can maximize.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. I think we're running out of time. I think a final question for all of you as we think about the future, right? Looking forward, some fascinating insights already. And any recommendations or any sort of guidance to others that may be considering the journey, already on the journey, looking to sort of accelerate, etc. Would love to hear from each of you. So maybe Naveen, if you want to start, just give some thoughts, future looking.
Thanks, Govind. Yeah, so I think the right perspective is very important. If you're thinking about your company, my advice is to approach it as building a concrete part of your organization, integrated part of your organization, as work is transforming, really, right? So I would certainly recommend a very long-term perspective. Often I've seen that what you can get from GCC is limited by your ambition, is limited by, your perception of what internally you perceive to be possible. I think if you connect externally, look at other companies, but also look at other industries. There are over 1,000 GCCs just in India alone, and these are probably almost all of the largest companies. So there are others who've gone through this journey, who have realized significant benefits. So please take a look externally, reference it, and be bold and ambitious is what I would say with this.
Andy, any thoughts from you?
I agree with everything Naveen just said. The only other thought that I have is that it's interesting now, both because I think pharma companies are trying to break down some of the traditional walls between functions, and also because technology more and more is such an enabler that allows you to do that when it comes to things like content. I think one of the potential areas of opportunity is for us to look at the silos of work or capability within our centers and think about how can those begin to integrate together. Because as we look now at things like analytics or content development, we see so many opportunities to harmonize talent, harmonize best practices, and even frankly, to combine groups to allow more breadth of career opportunity and higher levels of leadership. So that's another thing that I personally am very interested in, is how do we synergize across some of our current verticals to drive more value for patients over time.
Thank you. Uday.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to follow. Sorry, Pedro, you're going to have the worst. You're going to have the hardest job. So for me, what I see, what I've observed, and I've been working in the sector for about 30 years now, it's not getting any easier. Healthcare is not getting any easier. Innovation is incredible, and our collective frustration, our collective focus is to get that innovation to the patient. And I think the more time we can spend doing that work, partnering with governments, working with healthcare systems, making sure patients get the medicines, that's time well spent. And I think for me, GCCs have become mandatory. They help us do the things that allow us to spend more time on the execution side with our customers and with our patients. So I wouldn't look at this as a choice even. I think this is something that you have to create within your organization to enable you to spend more time. If you look at the amount of time we're spending doing things that can be done in a far more efficient, far more effective way, partnering in an effective way, I think we'll see the value accelerate. So for me, it's an obligation. And the future is one where we are able to spend more time with our customers doing those things than on some of the traditional things that we've all become accustomed to.
Pedro, unfortunately, sorry, you're for last.
I'll ask him another question.
I agree with everything that has been said, but maybe just to add a little thought on top of that, actually. Look, I'll use some of the values we have in Sando for the answer, okay? We believe that you need to team up to break barriers, and and we believe also that open minds open doors, okay? So with that, what I want to say, we are at that beautiful moment actually in the industry where technologies have done something amazing. We are bringing things to a totally different level. So it's the moment for that. It's the moment to team up and really break barriers of what we have been traditionally being able to do. To the point of navigating, we are limited by our own perception of what we see internally. It's time to change that. Then if you open your mind, actually, it's not about keeping the same process and translating that into a different set of tools that we map into that process. It's really the moment to rethink how we're operating and those new technologies which are emerging, and maybe it's a bit of hype, but if you think carefully, there are great opportunities to transform how you deliver your processes. In particular, in commercial, I really believe that the level of engagement that we will achieve through these new technologies will be amazing. We are clever on how to use them. So my point here is be a bit visionary. It's the moment for that. It's the moment to open up your mind and open those doors.
Wonderful. Thank you. Unfortunately, I could keep this going for much longer, but I think we're out of time. Thank you very much, panel. Really, really appreciate your insights, taking your time spent with us today. Thank you, everyone in the audience. Apologies if you couldn't get to all the questions, but please keep the conversation going. We'd love to hear your thoughts, feedback. We can circle back with the panel members, get some of those questions answered. Again, so we're wrapping up now, but there's a lot more in the Digital Summit coming up. Please do check the agenda and hope to see many of you in the future sessions. So thank you again, everyone, and hope you all have a good rest of your day. Take care.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.